My car wasn't working, so I tried to figure out why. Then, I got a message from my credit card company saying that I had an outstanding balance, and if I didn't pay it soon, my card would stay blocked. I remembered that my credit card payments are set up to pay automatically from my bank account. Confused, I checked my bank account and saw my balance was at zero, which didn't make sense because I should have had plenty of money there. The only other person who could have taken money from my account was my husband. I felt worried, so I called the police right away. My name is Garnet Felton, and I'm 30 years old. I work as a freelance web designer, which means I set my own hours and mostly work from home. I often go to meet clients in person, even though most meetings could just as easily be done online. I prefer face-to-face meetings so I can explain my ideas clearly. When deadlines are near, I sometimes work long hours without much sleep. My husband, Thomas, has been a big support, which helps me keep up with this demanding work. Thomas and I got married a year ago. We met a few years back when he represented a company I was working with on a project. We dated for a year and a half, got married, and he moved into my apartment. But there is a problem in my life. Thomas's parents have a habit of overspending and are often short on money. Thomas and I split our living costs, but since I earn more, I usually cover the monthly expenses, and Thomas pays me back half of it at the beginning of the next month. However, when I asked Thomas to pay his half this month, he hesitated and said, "Money is tight this month. Can I pay you after my next paycheck?" I was surprised. I was only asking him to cover half the expenses. He told me he had no money left until his next payday, which seemed strange since he'd just been paid 10 days ago. I asked him what was going on, and he explained that he'd been helping his parents financially. His vague response frustrated me, so I pushed him to explain more clearly. "Why can't you pay? And what's going on with your parents?" I asked. "Nothing, I just helped my mom and dad out with some money," he replied. Thomas's parents both work, his dad has a full-time job, and his mom works part-time. I didn't understand why they needed financial help, so I asked the question that had been bothering me. "Why do your parents need financial help if they're both working? They didn't need this before," I asked. Thomas replied, "I've been sending them money regularly, but this month, they asked me to send more." "Did you actually agree to send them more?" I asked, surprised. "Yes, I did. What's the problem? If my parents need help, it's only natural for me to support them," he said. "Fine, just make sure to pay me back when you get your paycheck at the end of the month," I said. Thomas can be quite stubborn when he's made up his mind, and he rarely apologizes. I knew pushing him more wouldn't make a difference, so I decided to wait until payday. But ever since that conversation, he started finding excuses not to contribute to our household expenses, and if he did pay, it was only about a third of his share. It's now been almost 6 months since he stopped paying his half, and I'm getting frustrated. I've been paying for everything, and on top of that, I do all the household chores. Thinking about it made me feel foolish and empty. One night, he came home late, looking a bit tipsy. I couldn't hold back and raised my voice. "Hey, if you're going to be out drinking, couldn't you have called? I made dinner and waited for you." "Sorry, a colleague invited me out unexpectedly," he said. "Fine, but you could at least send me a message," I replied. "I've asked you before to let me know if you'll be late." "Stop yelling at me as soon as I get home. It feels like I'm not welcome here," he snapped. "What's that supposed to mean? I'm the one who's covering all the bills and making dinner, and I get no consideration in return." His expression turned cold. "I can have a drink every once in a while. I work hard every day." "So do I said. "I handle all the household chores, too, and if you can't help with expenses, then maybe we shouldn't be sending so much to your parents." "Why are you bringing that up? My parents are my business, not yours," he said sharply. "What about us, Thomas? Aren't we a family, too? I'm your wife, living with you here, and I'm taking care of everything," I said, hurt. "Oh, why does it matter? You make more than me anyway," he scoffed. His dismissive attitude shocked me. Thomas only gets to live so comfortably because I'm covering everything. A simple thank you or sorry for the inconvenience would go a long way, but instead, he's acting arrogant. I was too angry to keep arguing, so I decided to talk again the next day. The next evening, as I was making dinner and waiting for him to come home, I heard the front door open. "Welcome home," I called from the kitchen. But there was no response. Then, I heard footsteps in the living room. When I looked, I saw that Thomas had brought his parents with him. Here's a simplified version. Mom, Dad, why are you here?" I asked, confused. With a smug look, my husband replied, "My parents have something they want to discuss with you." "Discuss with me? About what?" I said, still puzzled. Encouraged by my husband, my father-in-law looked at me apologetically and said, "Sorry for dropping by unexpectedly. We wanted to talk about the money Thomas has been sending us." "What?" I said, caught off guard. Then my mother-in-law, who had been silent, spoke up. "Garnet, Thomas has been sending us money every month out of care for us. It's unfair for you to be so hard on him." "What are you talking about?" I asked, feeling both hurt and confused. "All I want is for Thomas to pay his share of our living expenses." She sighed and said, "Garnet, we're your in-laws, right? If your own family was struggling, wouldn't you want to help? Your father-in-law and I have been short on money lately, so we expect Thomas to keep sending us financial support. That means you should cover all the expenses for the two of you." I was shocked. They seemed to think it was completely normal for me to pay for everything. Finally, I couldn't hold back and said, "Enough. How is it fair for me to handle all the household chores and pay for everything too? Isn't that what married couples do? Married couples support each other, don't they?" my mother-in-law said, as if I were being unreasonable. My husband just laughed, entertained by his mother's words. No matter what I said, none of them would listen, and they only left after 9 p.m. that night. After they were gone, my husband handed me a set of signed divorce papers. Shocked, I asked, "What is this?" He looked down at me and said, "It's exactly what it looks like. If you keep defying me, I'll divorce you." "Are you serious?" I asked, barely believing what I was hearing. "Of course, if you don't want a divorce, just do as I say. Your role is to follow, not to lead." I wanted to stand up for myself, but I felt drained. Maybe there was no point in talking to Thomas anymore. Maybe I should consider divorce too. It didn't take me long to decide. The next day, I signed the divorce papers and went to City Hall. The papers were processed, and just like that, our marriage was over. Here's a simplified version. Now that I was single and free, I felt refreshed and ready to start a new chapter. I planned to move out soon and live on my own. To celebrate, I decided to go shopping at the department store. Since I usually work from home and had been covering all the household expenses recently, it had been a while since I bought anything nice for myself. Today, I wanted to treat myself. I headed to the women's clothing section, tried on a few dresses, and decided to buy two, but at the checkout, when I handed over my credit card, the cashier gave me a strange look. I'm sorry, ma'am, but it seems we can't use this card," she said. "What? That can't be," I replied, confused. "We tried a few times, but it just won't process." This surprised me. The last time I used the card was to buy a new tablet for work, and it worked fine then. Why wasn't it working now? Feeling anxious, I rushed home and called the credit card company. After explaining the situation, the operator gave me shocking news. "We need you to pay the outstanding balance immediately, or your card will be unusable," she said. "Outstanding balance? What balance?" I asked, confused. "Yes, as of last month, we couldn't deduct the payment from your bank account." "That's impossible," I said. "Please check my bank account balance." Here's a simplified version. Now that I was single and free, I felt refreshed and ready to start a new chapter. I planned to move out soon and live on my own. To celebrate, I decided to go shopping at the department store. Since I usually work from home and had been covering all the household expenses recently, it had been a while since I bought anything nice for myself. Today, I wanted to treat myself. I headed to the women's clothing section, tried on a few dresses, and decided to buy two, but at the checkout, when I handed over my credit card, the cashier gave me a strange look. I'm sorry, ma'am, but it seems we can't use this card," she said. "What? That can't be," I replied, confused. "We tried a few times, but it just won't process." This surprised me. The last time I used the card was to buy a new tablet for work, and it worked fine then. Why wasn't it working now? Feeling anxious, I rushed home and called the credit card company. After explaining the situation, the operator gave me shocking news. "We need you to pay the outstanding balance immediately, or your card will be unusable," she said. "Outstanding balance? What balance?" I asked, confused. "Yes, as of last month, we couldn't deduct the payment from your bank account." "That's impossible," I said. "Please check my bank account balance." When he finished explaining, he looked at me smugly and said, "You shouldn't be complaining. They're your family too now. Think of it as taking care of them. Stop fussing over a mere $5 million. Without a second thought, I pulled out my phone and dialed the police. Hello, police? I'd like to report a break-in and theft. My address is... Thomas's eyes went wide as I ended the call. What? Did you just call the police? Yes, I did. Isn't this a case of break-in and theft? He looked shocked and defensive. Break-in and theft? That's too much. I live here. I looked him in the eye and said firmly, we're not a couple anymore. Actually, I'm the one renting this place. So technically, this isn't your home. And remember, you signed those divorce papers yesterday. I already submitted them. This is my home now, and you're just an intruder. You've got to be kidding. Call them back and cancel it, he shouted. I waved my phone at him. If you even try to touch me, I'll call them again. They're already on their way. Why don't you just admit what you've done? He looked panicked. Wait, we loved each other, didn't we? Why is this happening? Loved each other? I scoffed. Don't give me that. Do you even understand whose fault this is? All of this started because you blindly supported your reckless parents. You can't just take someone's life savings and expect forgiveness. He stared at me, speechless, and I continued. Who would forgive someone as selfish as you? Honestly, it makes sense. You were raised by parents who were irresponsible with money, so now you think it's okay to take someone else's hard-earned savings. I hope the police teach you a lesson so you feel the weight of that $5 million, I said. Just then, the police arrived, and Thomas crumbled to the floor in fear. Who's the person in question? The officer asked. I pointed to Thomas, who was now cowering. It's him. All right, get up. We need to take you in for questioning. Thomas tried to plead, saying, all I wanted was to help my parents, but his words were ignored as the police led him away. However, the police later informed me that the case was considered a civil matter, so they couldn't intervene further. Determined to get justice, I went to a law firm and filed a lawsuit against Thomas, demanding the return of the $5 million he took, plus an additional $1 million in damages, totaling $6 million. Of course, Thomas and his parents didn't have that kind of money. In the end, all three of them ended up deeply in debt. Despite their situation, his parents continued their reckless spending and even turned to loan sharks. I heard rumors that they now live in fear, hiding from debt collectors. As for me, I cut all ties with Thomas and moved into a new apartment. Thankfully, my career took off, and I started earning more than I ever had before. After ending things with Thomas, everything in my life seemed to fall into place. I only wished I had divorced him sooner. Though my marriage was a failure, I knew my life was far from over. I learned from this mistake and am now more cautious with whom I trust.